110 with 1% blister test. Head form of blister the size of a quarter. 110
I would like to start on time.
You're late.
We have one candidate that's running a little bit late, and we're going to wait a bit for him, Mr. Domenici. We have another candidate just got her food, so we're going to let that rest for a while too. But what I'll do is give some of the upcoming events. I'll do our agenda out of order, in other words. So what I would like for you all to do, please, is stand for our pledge of allegiance. I've asked Mr. Oakland to lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
Please remain standing. We have the invocation of Reverend Anderson to do that for us, please.
Dear Heavenly Father, we ask that you be with us this evening, that we may forward our country in the right direction, that we may choose and pick those who will serve them honestly. We ask for blessings upon this food, and Lord, we ask all these things in the name of Christ Jesus. Amen. Amen.
Let me tell you about an upcoming event, okay? We were going to have a family barbecue out at the Gubernatorial this Saturday, but it has been canceled. Saturday and Sunday, May 28th and 29th, we're going to have a booth down there at the Blues Festival, and I believe we need people to help do that. Does anybody here volunteer to do that? You volunteer to do it? Yeah, okay. If you guys need some more help, we have sign-up sheets. I think they're over there. Wild West Rodeo is going to take place June 2nd through 5th. We have volunteers that are helping out there for that. Dana, again, is going to give you, like, you know, angel wings or something. Let me tell you about some other important dates. Poll workers training. That's going to happen Friday, the 21st of May, from 10 to 11. I don't know where that's going to take place. Does anyone here know that?
Margaret Hoppers.
Margaret Hoppers. Okay. You can call down to that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Margaret Hoppers. Okay. Presiding judge training is going to take place that next Monday, the 24th, 10 to 11. Is that the same place? Do we know where that's taking place? I don't know if we have any presiding judges or not.
Oh, that's at the Grant County
Courthouse.
presiding judge or poll worker. There's the city things
So if you're going to do that at the courthouse. Absentee ballots were sent out the 30th. Okay, there is an application here at the front table. Early voting is going on right now. Will end on the 29th. And of course, the primary is June 1st. On May 22nd, we're going to have our reorganization meeting. And that's going to be at Western New Mexico University at the Bessie Forward Global Resource Center. That's a nice auditorium there, plenty of room for everybody. Hope to all see you there. It's open to all Republicans, and everybody gets to have a say-so in this reorganization. We do have our gubernatorial candidates tonight. Janice Arnold-Jones is here. Mr. Domenici is on his way here. Doug Turner has representatives here. Ellen Way has representatives. And Susanna Martinez also has a representative here. We're going to hold off on doing anything to them until you guys get a chance to finish the food and stuff. So enjoy, and I'll call you back, meeting back into order here in 20, 30 minutes or so. Enjoy yourself.
Are you giving that up?
I apologize for not being here today, but you want to send a letter back here so that you guys can come and see him the I'm sorry. This is from Doug Turner. He wasn't able to make it today. He's going to be here the 4th of May. He'll be in this exact restaurant May 24th. Please come out here and see him on that day. I think they do,
Well, yeah,
Well, you know, I figured that you probably see everything you got in front of you there, that I might as well
something. I'm Alan's Faith and Family Coalition's director, and Matthew is our Veterans Coordinator who's with us.
Well, I hope that something.
Well, we're in a mess, and it's a crisis of faith, and Alan seems to think that that's something that we need to fix first.
The first thing you see on the chaplain, even chaplain of Fort Barry, and chaplain of the PAB, the ESW, the Legion, and the community of Vermont. I'm also twice ordained minister. I've spoken from California on the Constitution, and Baltimore, border control, immigration. I'm a historian. I've had about 400 titles, and I've traveled in
That's great.
a lot of history that I can go into. You don't have time for that.
Well, my wife and I are the lay ministry television outreach of the Fellowship of Christian Cowboys, PRCA rodeo ministry.
Well, I was on radio at I was on radio. I was also in the State Army.
So you've been busy in your lifetime.
Oh, I have been. Besides, I flew this plane over the
This is how you stay in touch with me. My father was Army Air Corps in World War II, taught ground school and aircraft recognition to fighter pilots.
Well, I was at
Fort Worth, Texas.
I was in multiple engine. I dropped paratroopers, and after World War II, ammunition and supplies to the road who are building the road from Toledo, India, to northeast down to Mandalay, Burma.
Well, you've been busy. You will like Alan. 38-year combat Marine, 3 Purple Hearts, and 4 of the 11 top service medals.
They asked me when I was mushering out, do you have any disability? I said, no, I just want to get the heck out of here.
Yeah. How are you? I figured since everybody has all their reading.
Well, I heard you say something to the effect that Alan thinks we're in a crisis.
Well, a crisis of faith. In his mind, that I signed on to help him.
That's why the whole nation follows.
Well, you know, we're starting to it's certainly useful to have a
I'd like to introduce our local candidate. District 38, District 8. District 38. District 39, Linda Peacock. Who else do we have here? Is that about it? Okay. Good deal. What I'd like to do is have the candidates or their representatives come on up here. We'll start off with Ms. Martinez's representative. I'll have him introduce himself. And stay up here. Let everybody have about 5 minutes to talk about issues. Then we'll have a general question and answer like we've done before for the candidates. So, All come sit up here at the same time.
Things class? No.
Okay. Good evening, and thank you for having us. My name is Adam McGuire. I am Susanna Martinez's campaign manager, and I have to start with saying I apologize she's not here. Of course, you would have seen her if she was here already. And I will start with the disappointment that she is... Speak a little louder. Sure. I apologize for Susanna not making it here this evening. I have a statement that I'm going to read from her, and I'm going to apologize ahead of time and say that she's a much better speaker than I am. She's much better looking, and she does all these wonderful things. So unfortunately, I'll give her the opportunity on May 25th when she's back in town to answer any of your questions. So I'm going to read a statement that she did prepare for me to read for this evening. Good evening. I'm sorry I could not attend this event, but I wanted to make sure you know why I'm running for governor and why I'm humbly asking for your vote. I believe I am the most qualified, best individual among the Republican primary candidates to serve in the governor's office because I have the executive experience that clearly speaks to the bold changes that are necessary for New Mexico to move forward. Today, our state is behind by any and every measurable standard. State government has grown by 50%, but we have lost thousands of jobs. New Mexico has been confronted by public examples of fraud and corruption enabled by the current administration. Our state has amassed a massive budget deficit, and after wasting the public's hard-earned money, government is returning with its hand out. Does anyone really believe these issues can be solved with the same tired approach? New Mexicans understand we need someone who will shake up the status quo and deliver results, not excuses. I am that person. My evidence is my record as district attorney in Joniana County. My office obtained a conviction against the county clerk for 5 felony charges of violating the election code and the municipal court judge for voter fraud. I run the second largest DA's office in the state and did so on budget. Simply stated, I am the candidate who can keep Diane Denish's fault. After my decisive convention victory, it was reported in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Many Democrat Party regulars interviewed potential problems at the strong showing by Las Cruces District Attorney Susanna Martinez at the Republicans' pre-primary convention in Albuquerque on Saturday, end quote. As a new face and as a female Hispanic candidate, several Democrat candidates said Martinez could be Denish's most difficult GOP opponent. I've been elected and re-elected 4 times, winning in a county where Republicans are outnumbered nearly 3-1. My work ethic has earned respect and support across the political spectrum as that of a leader who can bring people together while fighting for what is right. I will do the same as governor. I will set a clear course, address serious issues, and put state government back to work for you. The Richardson-Denish administration has failed us. Their conduct has been deplorable. The threat of another 4 years of recklessness and incompetence necessitates we put forward an individual with bold ideas and a proven track record. As we approach June 1st, I will make this argument humbly and respectfully, and I ask for the electorate support, your support, so we can get our beloved state back on track. Thank you and God bless. Before I leave, I did want to mention, and I'm not leaving, but before I leave the podium, we had just recently put out an economic recovery plan. And I made copies that are in the back, and I've been handing out some of them on the table. Susanna understands that jobs in the economy are what's, for the most part, on the voters' concerns and on their mind. And we detailed a little bit of plan with some more meat, and we put it out in the back there. And if you don't want to raise your hand, I'll go and grab you some when we're done here. But this will explain a little bit, and I hope answer some of the questions that you might otherwise ask if Susanna had been here tonight. I will say again, She apologizes for not being able to make it tonight. She had a prior commitment, but she will be back here on the 25th. And Connie Zawacki will be our local contact person for that here. And if you have any questions, the business card's back there with all of our information. Feel free to give us a call at the office, or feel free to let Connie know as well. Thank you for your time.
Now we'll have Mr. Alan Way representative.
Good evening. I'd like to go ahead and apologize for Alan not being here this evening. Same thing, we had a prior engagement that we booked 3 months back, and it's actually a smaller crowd than what we have here, so Alan was a little bit upset that he couldn't come to this because he was at that instead. So, but a great turnout, and thank you guys all for coming. It's good to see that everybody's concerned and ready to finally make a difference. I'm going to read a letter that Alan has sent, and I'll keep it short and simple. All right, dear friends, the stakes could not be any higher for New Mexicans than they are right now. We are heading into this year's election cycle, and as citizens, we have a clear choice. We can stay on the same path of big government, wasteful spending, limited job opportunities, open borders, and failing schools, or instead, we can change the way we do business in Santa Fe. I'm not a career politician, and I don't need a job. I'm proud to be running for governor because we need to get our economy jump-started and back on track. I want our kids and our grandkids to have a future here. I'm a New Mexico businessman of over 30 years and a retired Marine Corps colonel. I have fought in 3 wars, including 2 tours in Vietnam, to protect the rights and freedoms that are guaranteed to us by the U.S. Constitution and by God. I'm running for governor because I believe we need a new kind of leader. New Mexico is ready for a governor who will lead with honesty and integrity, who will pull no punches, and who will not back down. As governor, I will cut job-killing regulations so that our small businesses can grow and add new jobs. I will balance the budget without raising taxes, and I will clean up the corruption that is driving jobs out of this state. I will pursue common sense policies like ending driver's licenses for illegal immigrants and making sure that more of our education dollars go directly to the classroom. Diane Dennis squandered hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxpayer money so she could fund her public relations machine. We can no longer accept these kind of poor decisions from our leaders. I don't believe we can afford to win this election in November and fail to govern in January. Getting elected isn't the real battle. The real battle will come when we have to turn things around in Santa Fe and when we have to fight to free up the private sector and reduce the tax burden on our families and business. That will be the real challenge, and I respectfully ask for your vote. Every vote will count this election, and I hope I have earned yours. I won't let you down. Sincerely, Alan Way.
We have Mr. Doug Turner's representative.
Hello there, my name is David Heminger, and I help run the Las Cruces office of Doug Turner. And again, he also had a prior commitment and does apologize for being here. But I just wanted to give you guys a little bit about why I would vote for Doug. I'm a brand new registered Republican. I just turned 18 last July, and on my very same birthday, I went and registered as a Republican. Hey! Yeah, I'm a college student at Mexico State University, and I met Doug, and this is 2 weeks before the Doñana County Convention. And I met Doug, and he sat down with a couple of us college Republicans, and and I asked him, I said, Doug, what are you going to do for college students, and how can you help us? He says, I can't tell you how I can directly help a college student. We don't own businesses, we don't pay a mortgage, we don't do anything. Well, we have a lot of fun. But Doug says, I understand that you are going to be in our very position very quickly, and that you are the future of this state. Doug can relate to anybody on any level. And Doug has 2 little kids, and I have 2 very little siblings. Doug's kids are 3 and 7 months old. My little brother and sister are 6 and 4. The decisions Doug makes on education are going to directly impact his kids as well as my little brother and sister. So Doug is for vouchers. He's for more choices for parents. Charter schools, more private schools, and he believes that if parents choose to homeschool their kids, they deserve more support from the state. Doug, as a small business owner, like my dad, he understands budgeting. He understands that if you don't have money, you can't spend it. And Doug understands that this big government and the regulations that are placed on businesses is not going to work. And so Doug has already verbally committed to reducing the state size of state government. He's demanding the resignation of all state political appointees that the Richardson administration has already established. Doug is already actively suing the Richardson administration for trying to pass through a state cap and trade. Where they get the idea that the air in New Mexico stays in New Mexico is beyond me. So, you know, to say that Doug can fix the state, he's already trying to do it, and he's not even governor yet. I'm very nervous. I've not done this before, so I'm already losing what I'm supposed to say. But I'm already 18 and I get it. You know, what we're doing here in the state, it's not working. It needs to change. You know, right now, I'm ready to move to Texas with the way things are going. That's got to change. And we've got to make it to where we can stay here and save New Mexico, keep businesses in New Mexico, keep businesses from like my dad's closing because they just can't survive in an economy like we have. Doug is the man that's going to fix that for us, and I believe that firmly in my heart. And you know, and I ask that you consider looking at him and consider voting for him in our primary on June 1st. Thank you, guys.
Now we're going to have a question and answer period after everybody has their introductory speech. And these young gentlemen are nervous about you asking them questions. They're the representatives, they don't know verbatim what the candidate would say. So be kind to them. They're trying to get out of it. I'm not going to let them go. Mr. Domenici was next on the list, is not here, so I'd like to introduce Janice Arnold-Jones.
Do you think Pete would mind if he's not here? I'll take his time too. Never mind. I'm Janice Arnold-Jones. I am running for governor. You know, it is time to take this state from the state of potential to the state of prosperity to the state of excellence. It's time. I moved here in 1963. It was in the state of potential then. It's still there. You think we have a problem? I think so. So you should know that a little bit about me. I did arrive here in 1963. I'm a war orphan. My dad was killed testing a B-57. My mom threw a dart at the map and decided to move to the closest base that also, there was a nearby university. It turned out, it was closer to Walker Air Force Base, but they were going to close it. So we moved to Albuquerque. But she really believed that New Mexico offered such unique opportunity. It was really the land of enchantment, and had a dream that we would race the Appaloosa. That's a little bit of a long story, but that's what we did. And I'm so grateful to have been here. So I did grow up in New Mexico. I went to the old Albuquerque High School. I went to the University of New Mexico, and I married John Jones from Santa Fe, who joined the Navy, and we spent 23 years trouncing around the world. So I am now a Navy wife, a mom, a soccer coach. I've had several businesses, and I currently manage a business in Albuquerque. I am a DOE contractor, and I do really fun stuff called system test and system integration for complex systems. It's a great living. I love it. And so, but in the middle of all of that, I got elected to the House of Representatives. And so for the last 8 years, I have served with Representative Hamilton, and where's Kathy McCoy? Representative McCoy? Anyway, she, who is also here, she's wearing the red sweater. Please say hello to her. She's from District 22. I have served on the Tax and Revenue Committee, the Voters and Elections Committee, and just a whole plethora of interim committees. And I tell you this story because you know what? You have a choice to make. I am applying for a job. And aren't you going to look at whether or not you have experience at least related to that job? I hope so. Because we have a bureaucracy that is out of control. The bad thing about bureaucracies is they defend themselves. You all know that. They're like a living, breathing organism. The advantage I have is that I have sat on the edges, not always part of the bureaucracy, but pretty soon you get to know where its weaknesses are, where you can actually slide that scalpel in and trim out some of the fat without the bureaucracy fighting back too hard, so you can make some of those changes. That's who I am. Not flashy, not going to scare it off, but I have a mission. And so for the state of New Mexico, there are things that need to be done. And let me just start with 4 things, really simple things. Our economy's in the toilet. Let me repeat that. Okay, maybe not. Okay. We're really in trouble. You know, and part of the problem is we have too many government sector paychecks. Just basic math. A government sector paycheck contributes only 1/4 to the revenue stream of the state that a private sector contributes. And that's just basic math, because the government doesn't pay taxes on buildings. They don't pay taxes on grocery receipts, taxes on supply. It's a different revenue stream. You have to have a robust economy. Now, as I tell you that, and you all know absolutely we can do that, and there are hundreds of little tweaks that we can make it easier to do business. There is a big elephant in the room. It is ethics. It is ethics. I am so tired of people being shaken down, ripped off, threatened. Just this last week, I just went across the northern part of the state. I was in Clayton, I was in Springer, and I was in Cimarron. In 3 different towns, people that had not talked to one another, I got the same story. And let me tell you what that story was. We have a problem with CID. CID stands for... Anybody know those groups? Oh, okay, you have some. Okay, good, we're going to talk about that. Construction Industries Division. I'm going to talk about a division that hurts your business. This is one, if the inspector wants to jerk you around and delay your inspection for 2 weeks while you're paying your folks, can you go broke? Yep. Here's what these individuals told me. We had a problem with CID in the northeastern part of the state. We went to the governor's office repeatedly, and the answer finally was, for $4,000, we'll give you 10 minutes.
Oh, what?
And it was the first time, because I knew this was happening. Now people are willing and ready to stand up and say, I have had it. As your governor, there is no toll to come and see you. You have a right. How dare this administration do that? That is what you have been living under. Ethics starts there, and it goes all the way down, whether you're slow rolling a permit or whether you are shaking down somebody to come and see a duly elected official whose only duty is to listen to you. Education. If we don't, once we fix ethics, we've got to deal with education. If any of you know anything about what I have done, you know that education is my passion. There are many steps, there's no silver bullet, but I will tell you our connectivity will change the face of education. So let me tell you the good news, and there is good news. Trust me, there is good news. We have the best opportunity today, right now, and we have an opportunity because we're broke. We're broke. I am so excited. And the reason I'm excited is when you're broke, you have no place to go. You have to make some decisions about what's important. Well, here's what's important. We have the ability to create a new economy. That economy needs to be focused on energy. We have coal, oil, gas, geothermal, biomass, wind, solar. We have all of these things. Can't get it out of the state. I hope you're asking, why is that? And it is because your state government decided to do something else with your resources. And so now we have very little infrastructure to actually move the power to our border. We will never have enough people in this state to use all of the energy that is available. When are we going to stand up and fulfill our role in our nation? We should be serving our nation, and we should be the largest energy exporter in the nation, and we can do that. But with that comes one other piece. So let me ask, how do y'all like your cell phone service? There is another issue that can and should be fixed. You know, we're a large state, and we all love our geography. But the fact that we did not invest, and more importantly, got in the way of communication, it has held us back. It has allowed a relatively corrupt form of government to flourish because you couldn't see it and you couldn't talk to it. I intend to change all of those things. I will be open to you. If you're not certain, I'm the one that took the webcam to the legislature. My door is open. I believe in honest, open dialogue because the problems we are going to face are going to be new and unique, and it's going to take every single one of us to engage to lift our state from the state of potential to the state of success to the state of prosperity, and I ask you to come with me. Thank you. Did you want me to stretch?
Our other gubernatorial candidate here is Mr. Pete Domenici Jr.
Good evening, everybody. I'm sorry I'm late. Thank you for waiting.
No, I was holding place.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This is Janice and my second debate together today. We started at 7:30. We had one in Albuquerque, and I think it's about a 15 so far in this campaign. Let me introduce myself. I live in Albuquerque. I grew up in Albuquerque. I'm an attorney. I have a business. I have about 5 lawyers that work for me. We work on water, natural resource issues. At one point or another in the past, and currently I've worked on both the Membres and the Gila. I'm currently working on both of them. So I'm familiar with the water and water-related issues that are facing your community, whether it be your county or your city itself, or whether you're thinking about the long term on the so-called New Mexico project on the Gila. So I don't know if people have questions about that tonight, or maybe more information for me. I try to track that pretty closely, but I haven't heard any particular progress on that recently. So maybe tonight you can enlighten me. My background is natural resource and environmental work around the state of New Mexico, and that's what I contend qualifies me to serve as governor. Is I've had the opportunity to visit virtually every community in the state, working for the community. Silver City was my client at one point in time, 4 or 5 years ago, and virtually every other part of the state I've had relationships with either people in the community, elected officials, municipal officials, and I've seen the impact that the state has on communities. And the governor impacts everyone's life in New Mexico. This governor, and this 8 years we've been through, has impacted everyone's life, whether it be your schools, your roads, or the lack of improvement in your schools, or the lack of improvement in your roads, or other fundamental infrastructure that you need for your community, or over-regulating your resource extraction industries and pushing new development across the border into Arizona. But everyone is affected by a governor, so I'm glad to see this many people out in this primary that we have, because we are, all of us concerned, Janice and I, about being sure, and the other candidates who have representatives here, about being sure that we get a different attitude in Santa Fe. We are looking for, and I'm looking for, an attitude where we clean up Santa Fe, and at the same time we move New Mexico forward. And in moving ourselves forward as a state, the governor needs to take into account the interest of New Mexicans. And if we look back over the last 8 years, we've had a governor who's taken into interest his goals. He chose to run for governor, or excuse me, run for president, and he needed a rail runner to show people. He needed a showcase. So he built a rail runner and used up transportation funds that could be used elsewhere for years worth of transportation funds. He didn't wait for matching federal funds like virtually every other federal highway project or federal transportation project. He used precious state funds to showcase that facility, so he'd have it in time to run for president on all of your backs, and the backs of your children, and the backs of your communities. And that's the attitude we've had in Santa Fe. We virtually don't have a dialogue now with, it's almost as if we don't have a governor. We don't see him in the paper, we don't hear about him, even though the state's economy is really in a crisis in many parts of the state. And as an overall state, it's in one of the worst conditions it's been in a long time. We don't hear anything from our governor. He didn't lead the legislature with a budget. He forced extra time to be spent in a session that was dedicated to the budget. And then what we've done is we as a state have allowed this to happen. It's not Republicans, but we as a state have allowed him and the Democratic Party to anoint his lieutenant governor as the successor, to have 8 more years of this kind of service, if that's what you want to call it. I wouldn't call it service, I would call it self-service, is really what we've had. And we were looking at 8 more years of that unless we elect a Republican governor. So some of my themes are, let's downsize our state government so we can get what we can afford to pay for. We can't afford a $6 billion state government with the economy we have, with the population base, with the revenue. So we need to downsize our state government. Let's not regulate with the mentality that business is bad, business is detrimental, business is dangerous. We want to be suspicious, we want to be adversarial. Let's regulate with the attitude, we want to know the businesses that we regulate, we want to regulate them fairly, we want to help them get through the regulatory process, get up into business. And if we do those things and become a business-friendly state, we have an opportunity to diversify our economy over the next 8 years, and we will not have a choice but to do that. We have to do that. But we have an opportunity we can't afford to miss to diversify our economy and allow ourselves to become competitive. If we continue the way we're going, we're on a downward spiral. We will have to end up taxing more, becoming less competitive. Then businesses will jump over New Mexico like they do now. Businesses that are here will relocate. Businesses that are considering expansion will look somewhere else to expand. And we have to turn that trend around before we get to a position where our energy costs are higher than our neighbors, our infrastructure is worse than our neighbors, our regulations are worse than our neighbors, and people won't have any choice but to skip New Mexico. And we are right at the cusp of that right now, where people will not choose to even consider New Mexico for business. And business is for jobs. The reason politicians want business is for jobs. And we like the tax revenue too. But we really want jobs. That's what makes communities thrive. That's what allows communities to grow. That's what allows people to remain in communities. That's what allows children to grow up and stay in their communities. So as your next governor, my goal is to clean up Santa Fe and at the same time grow the state's economy and support infrastructure and jobs in New Mexico. So thank you for allowing me to join you. I'm glad to be here.
I'm sure your folks have a question or two that you want to ask our candidates or their representatives. And to be fair, the representatives here can't answer on the same playing field, it's not as level as with our other candidates. So what I'm going to propose to do, and start with you guys, I'll have the candidates alternate who answers the question first, then the representative can answer in that sequence. Does that sound fair to you guys? Okay. I'm going to pick, you raise your hand and I'm going to pick you, so we'll go from there. Okay? What position did they take up on board? Randy.
I would like to ask all the candidates and their representatives how they feel about the damage the ACLU are doing to our nation, our schools, and Christianity. Amen. How do you feel about that?
We'll let Mr. Domenici answer that one first. I mean, you probably have to deal with these folks.
Maybe they can repeat the question so we didn't hear it back here.
The question was how the candidates feel about the ACLU and the damage they've done to the country.
Well, as a potential governor candidate, my main concern is states' rights, to be frank with you, and state interests, which the ACLU takes an interest in. And they also address federal issues and other issues. But with respect to the state, I would propose to you that the ACLU has cost communities money. They have taken projects that have community support and undermine them to the extent that they're either difficult to complete or more expensive or delayed. And I would contend that they have set in place an atmosphere where people are concerned to express their fundamental views about basic rights that we have, religious views, and to express those views. And so in the process of claiming to protect rights, they've actually in a way inhibited people from expressing their views, living their lifestyle, and it is so it's a tool that is used to pursue an agenda and to try to enforce a lifestyle that is, I think, anti the majority of New Mexicans, and in some ways anti-family, anti-basic basic values that a lot of us in here share. That's their job to do that. It's the job for communities to push back when that occurs. I know it's difficult. If you have a courthouse that has, you know, something on the wall they don't like, or you have a statue or something on those lines, or rights in school care and all those things. But I think it's part of the system. Pushing, one side pushes and the other side needs to push back.
The ACLU is kind of an interesting conundrum, you know, and their most egregious error is an error in understanding our Constitution and our First Amendment rights. And what they have decided as their mandate is most especially to protect you as in freedom from religion. Our Constitution and founding documents say freedom of religion. Two little letters that made a big difference. And I think to that extent, they are misguided. And I personally am going to stand up and say, you know, I don't need for you to protect me from religion. I am capable of choosing for myself. And when we have government or even nonprofit entities trying to tell you how to think, this is not a good situation. Now, that's how I stand in the ACLU. But I will tell you that, even in my experience, they've done some good things. So let me tell you one of the good things they did. Right after 9/11 in Socorro, there was a 14-year-old boy who had, I forget what game he was playing, but he had drawn, doodling in class, levels for a game, from a video game. He was kicked out of school. And it just happened, his dad is a soccer coach with me. He ran the National Radio Telescope Laboratory, and his son is kicked out of school. And it was not until we got the ACLU involved was his child allowed to go back to school. And for the lawyers in the room, you know, here is a child who had doodled a game path, and it was decided by a school system it was a layout for a bombing. and so you know, so there is a place. There is absolutely a place, and when you find those places, in this case, I was grateful. The end of this is this child was denied the right to go to school for over 2 weeks. So, you know, so I guess Pete is right. There is a balance here.
Nice to have something nice to say about it.
I'm trying really hard not to.
I personally don't even know where to begin to answer this for Doug, but I will say that any questions that I cannot answer on behalf of Doug, he will be here on May 24th in this very room from 11 to 12 p.m. I ran out of flyers, but again, if there's any question I can't answer, he'll be here for you guys to ask him personally.
Ms. Martinez.
Yeah, I'm not going to answer much on behalf of Suzanne on this as well. I will say
generally and personally do agree with you, and I believe Susanna takes that same approach. But as to specifically what she would do about it, as governor, I don't think I'm at liberty to say anything. I think that'll be a question you might want to ask her on the 25th when she's here. She's on the 24th, she's on the 25th, so you'll be all answering or asking the same question, it appears.
Mr. Wade, representative.
Alan will be back here the last week of May. I would give you an answer, but I don't want you voting for me, so I'm not going to give you an answer, because I'm good. He will be back, and we will have answers for him.
Do any of you candidates have any answer, or what's your opinion on the border of New Mexico?
Everybody hear that question?
Yeah.
The border
All
is
here?
kind of a big
I have a good
question.
voice, I can reach you way back there.
I'll let Ms. Jones take that one first.
The question is, what do we think about the border of New Mexico? I think we need to have one.
Good answer.
Yeah, and the problem is with the move that Arizona made, and I'm very grateful for Governor Brewer, but we are now surrounded by states that actually enforce their borders, enforce legal activity. Where do you think all that activity is going to go? Right here, right here. And so with regard to the border, I think we have to have a border, and because I'm your proverbial techno-weenie, let me tell you that not only do we need the National Guard, do we need Border Patrol, there is technology sitting on the border developed by Sandia National Laboratories that should be put to work today, and it is not being utilized. I believe that we can secure the border immediately. I'm going to throw, thank you. The one thing, and I know that we're all worried about this, there needs to be a proper way for people to help us do our work in this country. It should be effective, efficient, it should be productive. It should not cause lines. And so far, we've been unable to do that. But as your governor, if the federal government can't get to it, we're going to do that.
Since I started in this campaign, the border issue has risen in importance and profile, and that's been not that long a time period. That's for a couple of reasons. Mexico continues to deteriorate. We just had a recent incident here, as you know, virtually your neighbor over here south of Lordsburg, and the federal government has really not made this a priority to deal with the Mexican border. And so as this campaign has evolved, Arizona took very strong action, and New Mexico has really completely lagged behind. And it's another example of really an absence of leadership or an absentee executive. So states have no choice but to take action to protect their border and to protect that they do not become sanctuaries. So Janice talked about the border, I'll talk about the sanctuary part of it. What Arizona did was say we will not have checkerboard policy as far as what we are going to do if we arrest someone and need to check into their immigration status. They said, first of all, and most states have this, but primary is the driver's license is good indication in Arizona of valid legal residency or legal documentation to be in the U.S. It's not in New Mexico. So as a foundation, we have to change that. Then what Arizona said is all law enforcement will treat arrested people, me, you, anybody, the same. They will ask you a couple of questions about your citizenship. They will ask you for your driver's license. If you have the Arizona driver's license, they stop. If you don't, they ask you, are you a U.S. citizen? And if they're convinced and you have some other indication, they stop. If they ask, are you here legally? And you say yes, they say, show me the paper. If you show up, they stop. That's a standard policy. And that's actually, Bernalillo County has pretty much that policy in New Mexico, and Albuquerque has a policy of don't ask anything. So that is what I call checkerboard. It's depending on where you are and where someone is, they may get asked a question or they may not. A checkerboard is a bad policy for everyone involved. You as New Mexicans don't know what's going to happen to you. You don't know what to expect. People who are here illegally are willing to take the risk that they're not going to take in Arizona or Texas. So standardizing eliminates the magnet effect that sanctuary creates, and also allows for training to come across the board. So municipal law enforcement, county law enforcement, state law enforcement can be trained so they can interface with immigration, because unfortunately state law enforcement officers have to have some level of immigration training at this point, because they are enforcing immigration laws. That's the reality of what's coming in the western states, the border states. That's a new task. It's a new burden on the states, on the taxpayers, on law enforcement. But I think the best way to do it is to standardize it, train for it, and let people know that might be thinking of coming here. New Mexico has their act together. They have a standard way of dealing with this, and it's not a place where someone would want to go to get out of Arizona or to get out of Texas, where we don't want that. We want people to say, I want to go become legal. I want to go get legal documentation before I come to New Mexico.
Excuse me, what standard would you recommend if you were governor, though? Well, I'd just like a clarification on what he just said. What is the standard that he would you propose? Would you say don't ask anybody, or would you say ask everybody?
Everyone who is arrested should be asked the same question.
Is that a question? I still don't understand. Are you going to ask them anything, or are you going to ask them, where's your documentation?
I'm going to ask them, do you have proper documentation?
Thank you.
Would you like to come on that, Mr. Arnold-Jones?
Well, I just want to add to a little bit about what Pete is talking about. So let's look at the Arizona law for a second. You know, and I get irritated with the national media who is talking about they're going to ask for your papers. Well, Pete is exactly right. If you have a broken taillight and you are stopped, there are two questions that are going to be asked of you. The first is, where's your driver's license? And the second is, where's your registration or your insurance? Your papers, oh my gosh. Well, you know what he's talking about, Pete's exactly right. That a standard set of questions. So if you fail the first two questions, what you need to have is, if you cannot provide proof of citizenship, then there is a standard process for the next set of questions. And instead of having Santa Fe and Albuquerque, which are sanctuary cities, they don't do that. That the standard would be consistent across the state. And I think Pete put it very well.
Yes. Yeah.
Gentlemen, if you want to comment on this, let's just do it that way. If you feel qualified to do it, please feel free.
I can speak a little bit about this. Susanna's put forth a plan, and at first Susanna would agree with Janice and with Pete that the problem is the national government, the federal government has failed to do anything about this. And states are starting to take this into their own hands, and what you're seeing now is New Mexico and our state quickly is going to become the state where illegal immigrants want to move to, because we provide so much for them here. And Susanna, she's proposed a 3-point plan to take care of that. What she wants to do, first and foremost, is stop giving illegal immigrants driver's licenses. Yes. The second point that she talks about is ending free tuition, scholarship tuition for illegal immigrants. And thirdly, what Janice and Pete were just referring to are the sanctuary policies that prevents the law enforcement from being able to ask the status of illegal immigrants. So she does have this plan, and I'm sure you all have maybe seen our TV ad that talked a little bit about this, and I encourage it's up on the website if you have any more information. But Susanna would love to answer questions like this, because she deals with this every day as district attorney of a county that borders another nation. and prosecutes these criminals that, and as she said, it doesn't matter if you're legal or illegal. If you commit a crime in my county, I'm going to prosecute you. And so that she'll be glad to answer questions and talk a little bit about.
I'll go, yeah. Well, and I think the candidates all across the board kind of have the same ideas, and they're all going to tell you the same thing about this, because it's the only thing that is going to work, and that there is a problem here. A story that Doug likes to tell, and I can tell you this because I've traveled with him for the past 3 months. An illegal immigrant was breaking into Doug's car in Albuquerque, and Doug heard it. He ran outside, and he chased the man down about 3 or 4 blocks. He tackled him in the street, and he called the cops. The cops show up, and they ask him, "Do you want to press charges?" And Doug says, "Well, of course I want to press charges." And the cops say, "Why bother? He's going to get prosecuted, he's going to get sent back over the border, and in 2 or 3 weeks he's going to be right back in your neighborhood." And as Doug will tell you, that's got to change. That's not okay. Like Susanna, Doug believes we need to quit giving these driver's licenses to legal immigrants. And on top of it, our national, we have over 100 National Guardsmen on the border. They don't have bullets in their guns, so what good are they? Doug believes we need to take laws similar to Arizona's, adapt into the state, and make it even tougher, while providing protection for law enforcement and our National Guardsmen. We have the 2 National Guardsmen that were charged for shooting illegal immigrants. Why? For doing their job, exactly. So Doug believes we need to add more protection for those officers. Okay.
To follow up on that, what you're talking about, would you possibly think in terms of duplicating the law that Arizona passed?
Do you want me to go first? All right, let's talk about the law. First off, it's 17 pages. It's an easy read. And there are some really good pieces in that law. And what the law did was to implement federal law and place it in the part of the code in Arizona law for trespassing. Could we simply lift it and put it in our state? No. And the reason is, and the linchpin is, the driver's licenses. Arizona has a standard driver's license policy. The other thing that is really a problem in our state, and it should not be a problem, the Arizona law actually focuses on the I-9 E-Verify process for documenting legal workers. What is remarkable in our state is the number of employers who have never heard of I-9 or E-Verify. And so what the law said is that it is a rebuttable defense if you end up hiring an illegal, as long as you have gone through the process and E-Verify is not perfect, that is a rebuttable defense and you will be held harmless. Otherwise, understand that it is aggressive. It is an aggressive law against employers. I happen to support that, but I was stunned to learn how few businesses in the state of New Mexico understand the existing federal requirement. Existing! This is law! I-9 and E-Verify. So, you just made me mad, so I'll let Pete talk. I have to get a chance.
The Arizona law is a comprehensive law. It is 17 pages or 18. I think it needs to be tailored for New Mexico. The part of it that is law that we don't have here, and I think will be difficult to implement, but I think the governor needs to be a leader on, is the part that standardizes law enforcement. The governor can set policy for the state police, but the governor cannot set policy for county sheriffs or municipal officers. So what Arizona did is their legislature and the governor got together and passed a law that applies to all law enforcement. So there is no checkerboard, and there's no gaps, and there's no distinction between a state police officer and a county sheriff. They both have the same obligation and the same rights. Once they arrest someone, the obligation to ask the question, they then have the obligation to notify Immigration and Customs, and they have the right to transport that person if they choose to do so. So that is, to me, that's the linchpin of the Arizona law that we don't have in New Mexico. And we need leadership from the governor to get the legislature to agree to that, And then it can be applied to cities and counties, so there is no choice left. So in Arizona, there is no choice. A city does not have a choice to tell its law enforcement officers, you don't have to ask. New Mexico doesn't have that law. So that's why we have this checkerboard, these different cities doing their different things.
Maybe representatives on that question.
With regard to the Arizona law, Susanna does agree that we need to tailor something for New Mexico. She has her 3-point plan, and she'd like to see something crafted that would be specifically geared to New Mexico. She doesn't believe that we need to copy laws of any other state at all. She has her format, she has her plan.
And as I just said, Doug is in favor of a law very similar to Arizona's. I'm just adding in more protection for our law enforcement officers here.
We're going to let everybody else get, you already had a question.
Well, I just wanted to express something very important. I'm a World War II veteran. I'm a chaplain of many organizations, but we won't get into that. I want to thank the speakers that we've had. I've spoken in Baltimore on immigration, California on the Constitution, and I'm expressing the feelings of many veterans throughout this great country that we have about our borders, whether they be our southern borders or our northern borders. And I just wanted to get some indication how you people felt about that, because when veterans, whether they are in bed or whether they are injured or whether we are meeting with a lot of veterans, ask me some of these questions. What are they doing? Then I can carry some of the answers that you have or your consensus or opinions on some of these things. It's very important that we have something to tell the men who are suffering and dying for your liberty.
And your borders.
And it's very important, and I just wanted you to know that.
Tom.
My question for the gubernatorial candidates is this. Would you, as governor, work within the state and with other governors to develop a multi-tiered business development system so that a person starting a business has a fair start instead of being buried under a bunch of legislation and fees right from the get-go?
I don't know about the part about working with other governors. What was that part of the question?
The problem is that if you start a business as starting out of your house, you're basically the same as a Ford or a GM. You have the same tax law. Why should the guy who only makes $10,000 a year be forced to do the same paperwork and come under the same thing as Ford and GM? Why not bring them along in stages and say, when you get to this level, you've got to do this?
Okay, I'm trying to make sure I understand this question, but as a governor in New Mexico, I think the state needs to make sure that we as a state facilitate small businesses starting up at different tiers, as you indicate. I don't, and there's a lot of opportunity for that in this state. We have overregulated ourselves to the point where businesses pass us by. People who are considering starting businesses can't even find out what the requirements are. And once they find out, they're changed as soon as they get up off the ground. So I think I would propose to work on New Mexico as New Mexico's governor. I'm not sure exactly what the point is on working with other states. That sounds like possibly changing some of the federal tax law. I'm not opposed to that, but I think there's enough to bite off here in New Mexico as far as trying to get New Mexico out of the way of business. That would be my first focus.
Similarly, you know, there are a lot of things that you can do with another governor. But here's what we need to do in our state. And let me just quickly describe the problem. If you are starting a business, if you go to the tourism site, the economic development site, the tax and revenue site, the regulation and licensing department site, or the public regulation commission site, they will all be glad to help you start up a business. And they're all going to tell you something different. And you know what? And some of it's wrong. And that's the problem. And so then I left out one called Workforce Solutions, which was supposed to aggregate all of this, and it's also wrong. So I happen to be a process person, and I love your question, because you should be able to go to one place, and everybody in the entire state should know what that one place is to be able to answer the question, do I need to have a license to do business in this state? And you know what? I bet you can't get a straight answer. And you know, that actually bothers me. And then when I look at some of the other requirements coming down, when going back to the Arizona law, one of the requirements of that law is a business license. Well, did you know in our state that you don't necessarily have a business license that is trackable, that can be withdrawn, that would keep you from working? So there's some very interesting things that happen here. So can we streamline it? Absolutely. And so let me take you one other place that as a measure of how we could change things and look at things differently for businesses. Since I sit on the tax committee, the way that we do our taxes makes me crazy. So I propose that if you have a business and you do less than $5 million a year in transactions of any sort, that we set a standard that you spend no more than 8 hours per quarter dealing with your taxes. I actually think that's excessive, but you need to start someplace. Would that be better than where you are now? Yeah, I see, he's speechless, he's speechless. Anyway, we can do that.
Any of you gentlemen? With regards to your question on the economy and jobs, I would again refer you to our economic recovery plan, which we'll have some copies in the back. And it talks a little bit about improving the business climate for New Mexico, so it may have your answer in there.
I need to comment on that as a small business owner. I've had wonderful dealings with the state tax people. How these people are hired, but it's interesting that most of them can't add or subtract correctly. So that's all I'm going to say. Linda.
Do you as gubernatorial candidates feel that legislative experience is important in doing your job as governor? Why and why not? Or why not? And if you could give an example.
I thought you should take it first. Sorry. That's a great question, and the answer is it gives you, legislative experience gives you invaluable insight. You know, as governor, you are going to do two things. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to set the vision and the policy of the state. In order to do either one of those things, you have to work with the legislature. There are 112 people from 112 different communities, and they all want to do it their own way. And so as governor, if you show up, and I will, can I talk about the governor for just a second? Sure. You know, the one thing I promise you as your governor, if and when we ever had to have a special session, I would make sure that I was prepared to do that, and that when the legislators arrived, the call would be ready so we could get to work. And that's an example of things that, you know, without being a legislator, I would not have known that that was a problem. But for the last 3 or 4 special sessions, we have arrived as legislators, and the call wasn't ready. Well, if you are going into the legislative session to set the policy for the state, know that the work starts many months in advance. To set good policy means that people have to talk, and you have to be willing to go out and get all of the stakeholders, and when you think you've got them all, you have to have a belief that you need to go and find some more, because that's how you do good policy. Once you've done that piece, then the governor does the implementation piece. As a legislator, I am sorry to tell you that some of the secretaries have come in and lied to us. And you know what? It really helps to know how that happens and why that happens and what you might be able to do about it. And one of the really interesting pieces, and so let me just tell you that we have some other constitutional offices. So here's a really classic example of why you need to know where the details are. So the Secretary of State's office calls me up and says, Representative, come over and please look at our new campaign finance reporting system. I said, no, send me a link. No, come to our office. I said, no, I'll never go to your office to file my report. Send it to me. They had no idea how to do it. No idea how to set up a system to do that. And so that is the value of legislative experiences. You know, part of it is recognizing it when it's not right and having an idea of what question to ask to maybe get there. And I just know of no better place than in the legislature to be able to do that. As a citizen legislator, you know, I was privileged to be there. We're often called politicians. I want to remind you that we are a citizen legislature, and while it cost me about $16,000 a year to serve, it was a privilege to be a servant, and it's an invaluable experience.
I don't have any legislative experience. Either did Gary Johnson, I might point out.
Yes.
Governor Richardson had a lot of it. So. not the state, but at the federal level and even the federal cabinet official. So I think experience is important. I don't want to downplay it. I think Janice's experience is very valuable. I will say my personal background is dealing with the regulatory end of Santa Fe, which is it's quite a learning curve, but I've been doing it a long time, 25 years of navigating Santa Fe, and it got worse and worse, and really that's why I got in this race, is because the regulatory world that operates our state has become so embedded with politicism and so politicized that there really is no distinction between what is a fair regulation and politics. The other thing I would say, just in my own background, I've worked with many stakeholder groups on issues that are complex issues that involve similar types of concerns as are dealt with in the legislature and between the governor's office. And so multi-stakeholder negotiations are something I do all the time. I worked on a permit for Los Alamos National Laboratories recently. We did 60 days of permit negotiations. Somebody commented and said, it sounds like you're writing a treaty or something. So I'm familiar with how you negotiate with people from different points of view and how valuable points of view, different points of view are and how that process works.
Do you gentlemen like to comment on that?
Sure. Well, I don't think that you can ever argue that having experience is a bad thing. However, Doug Turner has no political experience. The only office he ever ran for was senior class president in high school, and he lost. But I think as Mr. Domenici said, Gary Johnson didn't have any political experience either. And I think Doug Turner is a political outsider. He has no ties, no pay-to-play connections, anything like that. And I think that's what this state needs right now.
Well, Susanna's certainly not going to downplay the experience one might gather as a legislator or having legislative experience. She will say that she has some legislative experience, having worked with the legislature to pass Katie's Law, named after Katie Safford. She prosecuted the killer. I think what's important, though, is with regards to having the experience of being an executive, and that's what Susanna is of her agency. Being able to set board policy, have a vision, surround yourself with a good team, and deliver results. And I believe that's why 14 current sitting legislators have endorsed Susana Martinez for governor.
Over here.
We live in a state where there's a lot of potential, and that's what everybody keeps on saying. Why is it that we are so low in terms of education? And we can't say it's our teachers. We have some of the best schools of education in this state. Really, we do. Where is this problem with education? How are you going to fix it?
When I joined this race, I started researching education. I have a daughter in fourth grade in public school in Albuquerque, and I have 3 older stepchildren that have gone all the way through the public schools and all have college degrees now. But when I started looking at it, it looks like, to me, as someone who hasn't spent a lifetime in education, in 2003, we tried to reform education and ended up working on the teacher side of that more than the student side, which I don't think it's bad. I just don't think it's the whole picture. So we tried to get our teacher salaries competitive, and there was a lot of effort to do that, and some success. And now it's past time to actually focus education reform on the student side of education. And I think that needs to start with elementary schools, and more emphasis on providing basic reading in elementary school, assuring and verifying that elementary school children are not passed on to middle school without reading at the 4th grade level in 4th grade, the 5th grade level in 5th grade. Because once that happens, they don't catch up. They fall further behind. They may get some remedial help, and you might save an occasional student, but as a state, and you look, that's kind of your question, as a state, you've already lost the battle if you're sending kids to middle school that can't read. And I don't think our current system focuses enough on that fundamental level, kindergarten through 5th grade. We do a lot of testing. My daughter comes home all the time saying, Dad, I don't have any homework because I have to take tests today. Or, Dad, I'm tired because I had to take tests all day today. And then she says, the next week she says, we're studying for the test. Because we have a test next week. What are you studying? Well, we're studying for the test. So, well, why don't you bring some homework home? Let's work on it. Let's do some reading. Let's do some math. And occasionally that does happen, thankfully, but it's always broken up by these tests. So we have duplicate testing. We need to get rid of the duplicate testing. We do need accountability. We need to focus on that, on the elementary, I think, on the elementary teaching of our students. And then we need to focus on the upper end and try to get our graduation rates up by making sure that students are reading by the time they get to middle school, they're engaged throughout high school. And that means perhaps broader programs to keep them in high school, to have programs there that will keep them engaged. And so they're continuing to learn basic skills, but they're also possibly learning trade skills or something else. So we don't see these huge dropout rates. And they really vary throughout the state. There's some schools that have very low dropout rates, and other ones that are really tragic, frankly, and they're going to have catastrophic consequences into the future. So that would be my approach, is another education reform package, student day.
Thank you for that question. You know, the one reason that I am running happens to be this particular issue. And you know what, there is not a silver bullet. So let me tell you what has happened in our life. My son came home in 7th grade and said, Mom, you can quit writing me. The teacher says the order of operations doesn't matter. This is in reference to an algebra class. I nearly had a heart attack. Especially since in the arena that I work in, there are some things that are fundamental. This is fundamental. The sad part of this story is how this chain of events took place. We had a principal that was poorly trained, who believed in leading by haves and have-nots. My son's teacher was a have-not. She was an outstanding social studies teacher. 6 weeks into the year, they say, you have to teach Algebra 1. She never took algebra. Here she is, 5 months pregnant, this absolutely wonderful teacher, and through this mismanagement, lack of preparation, okayed by our certification, everybody failed. Everybody failed. And I will tell you, the teacher is no longer teaching. It breaks my heart. So we do not have simple answers here, but there are some answers that we can start with. And one starts with your governor. Now this governor got an award, the current governor got an award for being the NEA Education President. Well, I would say, so let me just tell you the perspective I have of education since I've been elected. In the 8 years that I have served, our education budget has increased by $1 billion. Our number of students has increased by 3,200. Our number of employees has increased by 5,400. And when I started, we were 49th in the nation in math, science, and engineering, and now we're 50th. So you are right. Something is dreadfully, dreadfully wrong. And there is not going to be a single answer, but I have some places where I want to start. And the first place you start is with the governor. Education is so important, not only to our children, but to all of us, that you can't afford to go a day, not one day, without talking about what you do for your kids this week. Oh, you don't have kids, what you do with your neighbor's kids. It is all of our responsibility, and it is our culture. And somewhere along the line, after I left in 1975, the culture that allowed me to go toe-to-toe with peers that went to Vassar and Yale and Harvard, when I went to UNM, what happened? What happened? So I'm going to start with the colleges of education. Sometimes I think we need to blow them up. but here, and I say that in all jest, but the reality is we probably need to, and I will be pushing to make sure that the first degree a teacher has to have must be in content. They have to have enough content to be comfortable. And the one thing that I cringe are the number of young women who are teaching math and they're afraid of it. Not right, everybody fails. The flip side of that statement is, it is time to make our colleges of education, when you get it, should be a postgraduate degree equivalent to a law school with the commensurate respect. And when I think we make those two changes, there are many other changes. The internet is going to allow us to provide curriculum. Standardized curriculum is going to help. But those are two places that we can start.
Actually, I'll just dive in here real quick. Susanna, first of all, believes that throwing money at education is not the problem. It's not the solution. That's what they're trying, and as Janice points out, she's seen that in her years as a legislator, and that is not working. Second thing, if you don't mind, I just would read something from our economic recovery plan that actually speaks to reforming our education system. New Mexico has languished in the basement nationally in academic achievement for years, with no improvement made during the Richardson Benish administration. Reforming our education system requires a different mindset that rewards good teachers with merit pay, cuts waste from the education bureaucracy, so more money goes into the classroom, expands parental choice so every parent can send their child to a quality school, and enhance truancy programs to reduce the dropout rate. I also support reinstating vocational opportunities in high schools, so every New Mexico student has the opportunity to learn critical workplace training and skills. So that's just a little bit about what she believes and how we reform the educational system. Again, that's going to be a question she's going to love to answer.
On Doug's side, he believes that we need to have vouchers. We need to have more charter schools. Like Suzanne, we need to have vocational training in these schools. Doug was able to take mechanics and woodworking and all those types of skill learning classes in high school. And I just graduated high school. We had nothing like that in my high school. Something's got to change there. Doug believes our homeschooling kids are scoring higher in most test scores than our public school kids. Yet they're not getting the funding they deserve for that. Nor are they getting the access to our schools that they should be getting. So Doug believes that needs to change too. And yes, we have a lot of great teachers in the state, but I know firsthand that there's a lot of teachers that aren't so great. But there's no way that we can get rid of them, and we need to find a way that we can decide if the teacher that is doing really good deserves to get paid better. And how do we know if she's doing really good? And the teacher that's not doing so great doesn't deserve the same pay that this teacher's going to get. And how do we get rid of that bad teacher? Doug wants to find ways to work around that and change that part of education as well.
We're going to have to have about 3 more questions and that's it. Okay?
Bill, there's a gentleman that's been trying for a while since the beginning of here.
This gentleman right here, well, I just picked on him. So
I've been very patient. I'd like to hear, you can just say yes or no. Do you support voter ID? I think that's very important. repeal of healthcare, support repeal of healthcare. And the third one I'd like to hear, can I trust you? I'd like for you to speak to your integrity.
Okay, voter ID. And there are many of us who have fought this, Representative Kathy McCoy is on the same committees that on voters and elections, and we have fought and fought and fought. We're not done. I will still fight. In Albuquerque, we do require an ID at the poll. You have to show a photo ID. It is a good policy. On health care, like all of the members of the Republican members of the House of Representatives in our state signed a document that has already gone to the AG asking them to join the suit regarding the health care program that was passed. And just not scare you to death, but at this moment, if that plan is implemented with its unfunded mandate, first blush estimate, $880 million a year for this state. I don't know where we're going to find it. We're $600 million short. And as far as my integrity, you know, I took a webcam to the legislature because I believe that there is nothing that I can talk about or should talk about in public policy that will affect you that I should not discuss in public, with only one exception, and that is employment, you know, employee regulations. That's it. That's it. Beyond that, what you see is what you get. If I can't talk about it here, then you know what, you shouldn't vote for me.
I'll be a little shorter. Yes to your first question. Yes to your second question. Yes to your third question. And I'll just give you an example on the third one, which was the ethics question. Two examples. If I can, I'll try to be quick. So in my business, the law business, we have people can file complaints against their attorneys. And they're encouraged to do that. It's pretty simple to do. I've been practicing 25 years. I've never had an ethical complaint. And I've handled lots of cases. I've dealt with lots of people in lots of normal and abnormal situations. Second, I have my own business. I have two women, lawyers, that work for me. They both started with me out of law school. They've been with me 16 years, each of them. I've seen their families grow. I've seen one of them adopt 3 children from China. They like to work with me. They think I'm an ethical boss. I treat them well. They do their job. That's kind of a concrete example of, I think, long-term relationships, whether they're employer, employee, give some sort of concrete way to put your hands on that.
Doug is yes and yes for the first two. And on behalf of his integrity, obviously Doug's not here to ask him that. But I can tell you right now, I would trust Doug with my absolute life if it ever came down to it, and I don't believe there's a bad bone in his body.
Yes and yes. And Susanna will be here to answer your question face to face. And I believe there's a reason why she's been re-elected 3 times as district attorney. She says what she means and she delivers results. I'm going to speak.
Yes to voter ID. Since this whole health care bill kicked off, our campaign has been circulating a petition throughout the state. We've been in every single town, our tour bus has. And we've been collecting signatures from everywhere in the state. So whether Alan's elected or not, we're going to have thousands upon thousands of signatures that we can drop on the Attorney General's desk and say, do your job. Your third question was integrity. I myself am a veteran as well, like Alan, and one of the things that we're taught going through our service, doesn't matter what branch you do. It's about integrity first, service before self, and excellence in everything that you do. And that's what you have to depend on, because you're going to meet this person from across the country who you know nothing about, and you're going to trust them with your life every single day that you're out there. There's going to be days where you're going to go outside the wire and you're going to go on mission, and you're going to trust that they're going to do their job to take care of you. Alan is a man of integrity. I was talking with him one day and I mentioned something about, we were talking about integrity and leadership and things like that, and I told him, I was like, well, I was always taught that integrity is doing the right thing even when no one's looking. Even when you come up to that stop sign, rather than blowing through it, it's doing the right thing when no one's looking. And Alan said it's also doing the right thing when everyone's looking, because that's when you have to make some of the hardest decisions. When you have the whole entire state watching you, or you have your party, looking at you, and you got to look over your shoulder and make sure you're making the right decision. No, Alan's a man of integrity. He'll make the tough decisions every time.
Well, it's really, we've got 2 questions left, okay?
My usual question is money matters.
Got the guy behind you there, sorry.
My fault.
On a regional note, would you support the casino down at Aquila Flats? Put that out.
I heard about that last time I was down here in Luna County. And, probably not is my answer. I'd be willing to be educated more on it, but probably not.
Yeah, I have kind of a similar lukewarm response. We have a lot of casinos. If you go north of Albuquerque, the number of casinos, the small ones that are struggling. And so I look at, are you pinning too many hopes on the casino? Is it viable? But we have a compact with the tribes, and if you're talking about a casino, it is really in their hands. If you're talking about a racino, that is a whole different story. And of course, you know that the racino in Raton is a tent and a mud pit, and the town is out $1 million. And it just breaks your heart. So,
Lordsburg's going to the casino now.
Well, and so the issue is that we do this, and Tucumcari is going to look for a racino. Do you have enough traffic? And so here's a point for you to think about when we talk about casinos. Albuquerque is surrounded by 3 very large casinos, Sandia, Santa Ana, and Isleta. The gross receipts tax took a 16% hit when we put those in. So it is not wrong to have a casino, it is the law, but know that it is going to shift your economy.
You asked me that earlier, and I told you, I promise you Susanna will get to you when she gets here. Doug will be here on the 24th.
All right, that was a quick question. You probably have time for 2 more. Jim.
Thank you. This question was relayed to Lieutenant Governor's candidates that were here 2 weeks ago, and I will say that they were unanimously in agreement on this. The universal world language, especially in business, is English. And yet here in New Mexico, you have several school districts that have other language as a primary language instead of English. That is the major problem, not only in this state, but throughout this country. But let's get back to New Mexico. As a governor, would you require that our school system require English as the primary language and any other language be a secondary and an optional language?
Are you willing to support a constitutional amendment? If you are, the answer is yes. Our Constitution guarantees our children may speak Spanish. It also says that we will teach in English, but I believe that our country is held together not only by a common history, but by a common language. If we give it up, it is the first thread that pulls apart your country.
English basic.
Yes, I would support the same concept. I understand we'd have to, some large hurdles to implement that. The public has to be educated, there has to be legislative support, and there has to be support for amendment. But yes, the fundamental concept, yes.
Are we talking a state constitution or the U.S. Constitution? State Constitution.
I don't know where Doug stands on that, but I'll tell you from my own experience. Growing up in public school, we had to learn how to say the pledge in Spanish as well, and I think that's absolute BS. I'm an American. I think the pledge of allegiance
James, fundamentally on the concept, Susanna would be in favor, but I think that's a question you'll have to ask her directly, because to be honest with you, that's the first time that we've heard this question. So.
I have to say something about that. Español es lengua muy bonita.
What?
All right, last question. Dana's doing all this volunteer work.
I have two questions. We'll make it one. In the Constitution, it says there's a recall for local officers. What is your idea about expanding that to state and federal? Recall. In other words, that's our protection. If a person doesn't pay attention to his constituents, they can vote him out of office before his election.
I haven't had that question raised, but I think it's a good concept. It's a good protection. It's a democratic process that provides a safety net and provides a process of protection. So I don't know about the federal side and all the restrictions, but as far as state, I think, particularly given the idea that we want to encourage our officials to be responsive to and to look out for the interests of their constituents, that's one way to assure that.
You know, I'm thinking about your question, and forgive me, my brain on our Constitution is a little bit soft, but there, by and large, most offices stand for either impeachment or recall, and there is a process. But there is one office, and it's the one that's bugging me, that there is no recall, and there is actually a flaw in our Constitution about recall or impeachment, either one of those concepts. But I think that the basic concept you're talking about is, does the voter have a right to direct redress? And that's what you're talking about. And there should be a process that is clear that if the electoral process does not work as you think it should, is there a process for impeachment or recall? But there is, and I apologize, and I'd be glad to get back to you, there is one whole segment in our state where there is neither impeachment or recall, and it's a bit troubling, and I just don't remember what it is.
I don't remember either, but.
Okay.
Definitely good question, Doug, on the 24th. Ditto. No, I will say that, and that's the second question in a row that since I've been with Susanna, we have not received yet, so that'll be a good question to ask her.
I don't know if this will completely answer your question, but Alan is a constitutionalist. He believes in right and wrong, black and white, there's no in between. And so if it's in the Constitution, then I believe that Alan will support it, absolutely.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, that's going to conclude our question and answer portion. And I thank these candidates and their representatives. These big candidates. Before you take off, poll workers and judges, we deal on the administration building at the county for that training. See you all on the 22nd over at the auditorium.
Right, yeah.